Okay, I think we've given people a few minutes to get in now. So I think we'll start. Yes, okay, this is, I think, with Intersection Group with Wolfgang Goebbels. Just like we've got a lot of new members since Wolfgang helped us with marketing the course. We are currently over 3,000 members. We got 50 new members due to Wolfgang's presentation. OSWA is one of the oldest IT meetup groups in Oslo. We've been going for 11 years. We normally have 10 to 15 meetups a year. Before the pandemic in person, now we've gone over to have online. And we've also been offering, the last years, we've been offering architecture engineering course with Tom Gilb. We hope to offer those online soon as well. So with that, I'd like to invite Wolfgang Goebbels. Can you introduce yourself and start?
Yeah, so can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, because I can see it. Okay, so you see my screen. So hello and welcome everybody from Vienna, Austria, and also to all my friends in Oslo, because I visited Oslo this summer. So I made some friends from some companies. So I know that some are attending today. It was really a pleasure and the only opportunity to leave my country to visit your beautiful city. And I'm happy to come back to Oslo, of course, at least in this digital way. So, but what can we do? No. So today's talk will be about Intersection, a collaborative enterprise design approach. And as a motivation, I really like to start with the strong picture here. If we look back maybe 6 or 7 years ago, what all the consultancies predicted, you know, this digital transformation, and everything needs to transform and become to innovate, and we need new technologies and blockchain and so on. And if you look back now, what has really changed, I don't think that a lot has changed. So I think is
Wolfgang, I don't see your your screen anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you see it again?
Yeah, now I can see it again. Yeah. But it's not in presentation mode.
Do you see it still? You can see it?
Yeah, it's on the Zoom, but it's not. Yeah, it takes a while before it gets onto YouTube, but it'll get there.
Is it better that way?
No, the way you had it before.
Okay. Okay, so
yeah.
So the question is, what happens with digital transformation and how can we make this elephant move faster? Because everybody says we need business agility, we need to be innovative, we need to shape ourselves towards more innovative ways. And in my opinion, not that much has happened. If you look at all the companies of the old economy, they are still in business, Deutsche Bank and all the big companies. And there, of course, there have been some innovations, but I'm not sure if that much. So the big question is, well, why isn't it happening? And with Intersection Group, we love elephants. And there's this famous story of the 6 blind men and an elephant, and each of these guys touches the elephant from a certain part of its body. So there's the guy at the back and says, okay, it's a rope. And there's the guy at the front of the elephant touching its tooth and say, okay, that must be a spear. And nobody of them, of course, gets the full picture of the elephant. Nobody knows that it's an elephant and what it looks like. And when I saw this story, I found it quite suitable for what happens in companies, because what we see today is that there are no single architects or no single designer disciplines. There are many, many disciplines. You know, there are the process people that have been around for decades. There are organizational designers. There are service designers that have been emerging over the last decade or so. And that's quite suitable. So what happens in companies is that you have hundreds of people co-designing, co-shaping the enterprise together, but with only very little communication between them. I was quite surprised 2 years ago. I took a break and I read a lot of books of those disciplines. And when you do that, it becomes visible that they are so ignorant to each other and they don't know the concepts with each other. So we must be aware that enterprises are co-designed by many people in parallel with only little alignment. So we have many designers, but little collaboration maybe only. And the second thing is the speed, right? We are living in this VUCA world. So time and market thinking is everything. If you go to a CEO's office and say, I have the newest blockchain technology and the newest artificial intelligence and I can deliver tomorrow, he will listen to you. But if you go to him with this typical enterprise architect story about sustainability and long-term benefits, adaptive structures, componentization, all this, what enterprise architecture stands for, typically they don't listen. So we are for sure we are in times where time to market is everything. And as a result, what we're doing is a constant botching of business and IT structures. So we are having many people working in parallel, and this leads to IT application landscape that looks like that. And I've seen maybe 20 or 30 companies in my life, the application landscapes of all the big companies we have in Austria. And it's always the same. I don't see a lot of loose coupling and modularization in the IT application landscapes. And then you can say, okay, how come? Why is it? So that's an IT problem, and business people love to blame IT for that reason. But in our point of view, that's only a symptom, right? That's only the technology symptom, and it starts with the business structures. And that's what enterprise design is all about. So the question is, what shall we do? What's a good thing we could do? And that's a quote I really like to use. We believe at the Intersection Group and with the enterprise design approach that that enterprises must shift from fixing their being to intentionally designing their becoming. So enterprises are in a constant watching mode. Time to market is everything. Launch a new product, launch it tomorrow. Sustainability is not so important. We don't know if we will be around in 3 years from now. So it's about quick and dirty, and a lot is about dirty. And we think, and with enterprise design and with the Intersection Group, we think that enterprises must shift from fixing their being to an intentional co-designing of the becoming. And that was the reason why we founded this enterprise design approach, why Milan Günther founded it 7 years ago, and now we are working together. And maybe also as a bit of a motivation, when we ask people, why is Amazon so successful? Right? Everybody admires Amazon. You see it on TV and Jeff Bezos, and they are so rich and they are so innovative, and that's true. But why is it? How come that Amazon is so successful? And there are many answers to that. And one, this is a software architecture meetup. So microservices, yeah. So if you're a software architect, you say, oh, yeah, that's loose coupling. They are doing hundreds of deployments an hour or so, and that's really cool. That's why they're so successful. But is it really the only reason? Of course not. Of course, they have this Amazon Web Services. They have really a strong worldwide infrastructure. We know that. And they have this business model. They seem to innovate. They have cool products, and they innovate, and they change the business model every few years and so on. They have a strong brand, of course. After 20 or 25 years of their existence, they are a strong brand. And they have efficient processes, logistics, and what they do in the warehouses and so on. And they have this awesome customer experience. So the message here is that if we want to design enterprises in a holistic way, if you want to see it as a whole, if you want to touch this elephant from all directions, and if you want to come up with a shared understanding, we must start with a collaborative enterprise design approach. So we must align all these disciplines, and we must connect the people that design the brands, or the brand people, of course, around. And there are these good old process management guys, for sure, and there are the service and user experience guys. And we believe with Intersection that we need to come up with a toolkit, with an approach to connect those disciplines and to bridge their concepts and to enable what we call negotiation spaces. So we must enable all these people of those disciplines in their silos to find ways to communicate and to get a feeling about the elephant, a shared understanding of this us. That's the idea we have with the intersection toolkit. And that's also the structure of my presentation. So for the next maybe 40 minutes or so, I will talk about the upcoming intersection toolkit we are creating with our community. We are an association, and with our growing community, we will come up with an intersection toolkit. And today I will present some core concepts of this intersection toolkit. Yeah, and then only a few slides about who we are, what we do, and maybe how you can participate, because we are an open source community. And we want to come up with a toolkit to help people create better enterprises. So what happens so far? The intersection toolkit is driven by a merger between enterprise design community. Milan Günther founded it 7 years ago, and there's also a conference series, Intersection. So he comes from this designer world, enterprise designers, and they are really big in user experience design, in brand design and all this stuff, yeah, all these young people. And I'm coming more from the enterprise architecture side. So I've been a frustrated enterprise architect with limited impact. So I'm an engineer. And the thing I present today is a true merger between mindset driven more from design and the mindset coming more from the engineering point of view. So it's a true merger between enterprise design and architectural thinking. If you've been following my posts, I started it 2.5 years ago. And with Intersection Toolkit, we bring the concepts from Milan's community and enterprise designer together with architectural thinking. And think of it as a set of practical tools to help people co-create better enterprises. That's also our mission statement. We want to help people create better enterprises. And we will see in the remaining of the presentation what better means. Better, what does it mean? A better brand, better products, better user experience, whatever. So optimize it in a certain way. With the Intersection Toolkit, we want to connect disciplines that are working in their silos typically. When you go to a large company, you have the process people and you have the service designer people and you have the IT and the domain-driven designers maybe and the microservices communities, and all of them read their books. We want to connect them. We want them to invite to connect to the simple concepts we will come up with. Yeah, and what we want to do, we want to connect or collect the wisdom of the growing community, and we are, I will show you in a few minutes, we are an interdisciplinary community. So we invite people from the org design world, organizational designers and user experience designers and software architects. And we have product designers in our network and also people from the agile community. And I think that's the strength, because we don't want to be the next discipline. We want to be a collaborative practice and invite those disciplines. They will be around, and I'm happy that there are so many experts in UX design and software architecture and so on. But Intersection wants to be invite those disciplines to connect and to co-create better enterprises. Yeah, and together with our community, we will come up with a version 1.0 by end of this year. So 11.5 months to go. It will be available for free. So it's an open source project where you can download it as a PDF. But I will discuss this to more detail at the end of my presentation. If we look at the Amazon story, so the example I gave, what makes Amazon so important? It becomes clear that it has a lot to do with their internal structures. So processes and IT. That's a typical part of the enterprise architecture. So that's coming from this typical TOGAF software architecture, Archimate, and so this way of thinking, business process management. There are some disciplines, and typically, when you're coming from this enterprise architecture side, you're dealing with architecture. You're dealing with processes, capabilities, information entities, IT applications, technologies. These are structured, and architecture has something of an engineering mindset, right? So architecture emerged out of this engineering thinking. You have components and you have elements between them. And architecture, so as we define it, is about what makes all the part in our enterprise work together? How does it work? What processes do I need to create a product, for example? Or what IT applications do I need to support a certain process and so on? But with enterprise design, we want to enlarge the scope of good old enterprise architecture. We want to enlarge it and add the green and the red circle as well. So we call them facets. We have the green facet, we call it identity. So that's a lot about the purpose. Yeah, who are we? A mission maybe. What's our story? Where do we want to go? So all this visionary thing, the identity is part of this green bubble. And as we can see, there's also a meta model where we connect the good old architecture with the storytelling and with the purpose and the identity of the enterprise. And the red bubble is influenced by all the user experience guys around. We know with digital transformation, service design, user experience is getting more and more important. And as enterprise architects, we need to broaden our field of vision also and connect with the service designer. They have their own concepts, they have their customer journeys, they have their top tasks. For them, customer is everything. So we look at the needs of the customers, and that's a good thing, of course. And maybe we as architects typically focus on these internal structures, engineering, re-engineering, business process re-engineering, and that stuff. So we have these three facets, right? So this architecture is the blue, identity is the green, and experience is the red. And very important for our work are these overlaps, intersections, we call them. So the overlaps between architecture and identity, the organization. So organization, you can see that as part of the business architecture of the company. You have hierarchies, and you have in process management, you also have organization. So for sure, organization is part of architecture. And products, yeah, you have product architects and processes deliver certain products. They are part of architecture, but of course, products are also part of the experience because they are at the overlap between what the company produces. The architecture is only there to create products, and the experience is how the product feels to the outside world. So these experience designers and product designers they discuss a lot, how can we create better products the customer will buy that makes sense for them, that provides a superior user experience, for example. So that's the next overlap. And then that's the branding part. And I was quite surprised. The branding is really far away from my career as an enterprise architect, but there's a lot of connection between branding and architecture. So if you see how the enterprise works and see it from what does it mean for our brand, amazing opportunities arise. And what you can see here is the facet model, and it's the fundamental part of this intersection toolkit. And with that, we want to broaden the field of vision of enterprise architecture and broaden it and connect it with all these disciplines to form maybe a truly enterprise architecture, because it has always been more focusing on IT and applications and so on. And with that approach, we want to nudge it closer to identity and experience and closer to the customer, get out of this inside-out thinking and also learn to outside in, so to get closer to the customer. That's what we want to do with this facet model. What we also have in this toolkit are phases, and we draw these phases in form of this infinite loop, right? So we start in the center, and in the center we say you have this facet. So that's the shared understanding. That's maybe the elephant. What do we think we are, and how does it work? Yeah. And then you go to the left and you have the phase of exploration. So what's the context? What's the design challenge? What's the customer reality? Or you can do an IT assessment if you do projects like I'm doing, is assess a certain IT landscape of a customer before you understand the context. So that's the first phase, understand the context, do a design scan, do an assessment and these things. And once you have a certain understanding of the problem at hand, what is the design challenge, you go to a co-design phase. And this co is really important for us because we believe that enterprise design, truly enterprise design, is always a co-creation. There are so many specialized disciplines and they will be around, and that they are experts. So you have the software designers and you have this org designers, and each of them, they have a long education. And what we want to do, and I will discuss this also in my presentation, we want to bring them into workshop formats, design sprints, and we want to open negotiation spaces where those disciplines can discuss and truly co-design, and we will come up with concepts and workshop formats how to do that. Yeah, and the third, if you go this to the center again, that's where the intersection happens. We call this phase the investment in change phase. So this is with Chris Potts. If you haven't read his books, that's really awesome stuff. What that means is once you brought all the people in this negotiation space and you come up with scenarios maybe. So you have target state scenarios. We could do 1, 2, or 3. We could remove this application. We can change this org unit. We can tell a different story in our branding. So there are always possibilities to change this elephant. But at the end, you must invest in a change. So in the center for us, that's change management, that's investment management, that's executive management. And we see this as an essential part of the intersection toolkit. So once you connected all these people in this co-design space, aggregate your findings in form of management instruments and bring it to the boardroom and enable governance decisions by boards or enable decisions by business units, however. But enterprise design is very much also about decision making, because only if you decide to implement a certain design, then it's realized. And we are not interested in design only. As you can see when we go to the right side, right? So that's the realization, and we call the right side of this loop the transformation side. So the first thing is design something new, have a look what's going on, come up with scenarios, then make a decision, invest in a change, and it can be a big change, a big investment, or you run experiments like in a lean startup world. Then you travel this loop rather quickly. So you do a bit of exploration, a bit of co-design, make a quick decision and experiment, and you go the loop. Yeah. But if you go have a merger between two companies, the design challenge is much bigger because you change the whole shape of the elephant and you have €1 million decisions, and you go this loop quite slowly and you make quarterly big decisions by boards, and then you change processes and change organizations and so on. Yeah, and then you go to the right side and you have the realization phase. For us, this enterprise, this intersection and design makes only sense if it's also based on realization, if you only manage to connect with all the people that build stuff, so that change the organization, or people that do software engineering, or people that build the shops and the plants, so all the builders for us, they're also part of this collaborative enterprise design process. At the end, each line of code you implement can also be seen as a design on a micro level more. But we think you must have the complete infinite loop, and we don't want to stop with design. Yeah, and then the final phase is reuse. There are some interesting concepts coming from the design system community, and also frameworks, design principles, and so on. And that's the fifth phase. And that's the big picture of the intersection toolkit I will discuss in the next 25 minutes or so. Meta model, right? I'm an enterprise architect, and we are so keen on meta modeling. And if you go to TOGAF Archimate, yeah, and you know, there are many meta models, and when you post it on LinkedIn, you have a lot of really fancy discussions. So we are keen on meta modeling. We enterprise architects. Enterprise designers, I'm not so sure if they are so keen on it, but at the end, we concluded that we also need something like a meta model. So what are the elements we want to design the elephant and the enterprise? And so this is the blue, that's the architectural elements we have in the intersection toolkit. And at the first glance, it might look familiar, and it is familiar. Of course, it's driven by TOGAF and Archimate, and there are so many meta models around, right? But if you have a look at them, TOGAF, RDM, I think they have 30, and then Archimate as well. So there's really a lot, and they are going down until to the network and quite into the technical details. We don't do that. For us, the architecture of an enterprise is business only. We don't have business and data and IT and technology. We say we have architectures, and the concepts you see here are driven by business architecture. So capabilities and processes are in the bespoke and in TOGAF, yeah, and IT application, that's the center for all enterprise architects. Of course, we have IT applications also because we need to design large IT mergers and so on. It's an element in our meta model, but it's not a technology. It's more about a user interface and how it supports capabilities and processes. So the lines between the elements are the relations, of course, right? And at the end, maybe the center of gravity of this meta model are capabilities for us, because it's the focus for all the resources. Yeah, and they are needed to come up with products. And you need IT applications and physical objects and information objects for these capabilities. And maybe also one important difference to what you might know from others, like Bespoke, for us, product and organization are very, very, very important. If you look at the Bespoke, they are not even in the core, they are in the surrounding, they are there. But for us, product architecture and org chart, of course, is a mandatory design element if you design an enterprise. So we see it as the core of the intersection toolkit, and we are really happy to have people in our network as members that are world-class people in organizational design and have written many books about this topic. And the same is true with product design. Today, the product designers are typically not connected to all the enterprise architects. They're in the business side somewhere and they design the products, and that's a real problem because products should always have been part of enterprise architecture, but have never been so. And in our point of view, they are. What does this mean for the good old architects, software architects? So this is a software architecture meetup. Broaden your field of vision. So when you are a service design, a microservices designer, have a look at maybe domain-driven design or concepts like that. And if you know domain-driven design, have a look at business architecture maybe, and have a look at branding and broaden your field of vision, because this picture for me is quite suitable, what I see quite often with enterprise architects. And maybe also when I was young, I had similar things. Get out of this technology and go closer to communication, facilitate people, try to understand this different way of thinking and become a true partner of the business people. So get out under your car and talk to them. Yeah, and this broadening the field of vision means open yourself up for the red and the green. So why? Ask the why questions. If somebody says, I need this service, I need this database structure, something, why? Why do you need it? That are questions typically architects, they don't ask it because there's the business, and the business people, they have a demand, and then we have demand management. And typically the demand people or the IT side, they don't question this why all too often. Why do you need this product? How does it help our brand? And what does it mean if we change this IT system? What does it mean for the organization? What does it mean for the culture of the people? So we must become aware that an enterprise consists of much, much more than architecture, and maybe parts that are softer. Mission, vision, why, experience, customer, those things. So with this slide and also with this presentation today, I want to encourage all the software and enterprise architects to ask these why questions and to understand it's much broader than microservices and data structure. It's much broader than domain-driven design. And that's reflected also in our meta model. So there are some elements coming from the UX community, customer journeys in the red tasks, top tasks. I wasn't aware about this, but it's really a cool technology, how to understand the customer better and to understand his top tasks. So what is it he wants to achieve? Typically, the service and the communication with the enterprise is not his primary concern, and understand his journey better, understand his task better. And on the other hand, always connect what you're doing with your architecture, connect it with the why question. What's the idea? What's the story of the enterprise? What's its mission? Why is it there? And dare to challenge the typical visions and missions that external consultancies come up with. So I've seen so many companies with very, very weak mission statements. And we as enterprise architects, we take it for granted. So yes, it's a weak mission statement, but we never dare to ask these guys why. What does it make sense? And for us, this meta model means to broaden this field of visions and connect this more technology space with the more softer factors. Yeah, and also in the center, and maybe one of the most important, I'm not sure, so maybe one of the foundational concepts in our toolkit are maps. Yeah, so design and architects, all of these disciplines, we're working with all kinds of maps each and every day. Customer journey maps, information entity relationship maps, UML white box diagrams. So we must know that each of these disciplines, they have their graphic design and they have their maps, but typically they are not really well connected. And with enterprise design, we want to come up with a small set of concise maps with a simple user experience. So with something that makes this elephant a bit more visible, right? And so the approach here is to bring it to the boardroom and to say, okay, we are no longer 6 blind men. I mean, now we can touch it, yeah? And we have a simple model. In that case, it's close to a capability model, if you're aware about this concept. So imagine what would happen if you have one diagram, a picture of a shared understanding, everybody agrees on, and that starts with common terminology, like that's the ear, and now you can point your finger and say, okay, that's the trunk, and that's the leg, and so on. But the key here is this user experience. This approach only works if you come up with a map that is appealing for everybody. We want to connect all these co-creators. We want to bring them in this collaborative enterprise design approach, means that we must come up with enterprise core map or something like that. So a connector between anything. And this must have really a cool user experience. And I like this metaphor here. So what I quite often say is we must make enterprise architecture as usable as an iPhone. So that's quite a suitable metaphor. You have these interfaces here, this touch screen, that's the user experience. And if we compare what enterprise architects deliver doesn't fit to the boardroom. And if you have a look what's inside TOGAF, it's quite ugly, right? And we believe that beauty is the key to co-creation. If the siloed disciplines produce ugly diagrams nobody else understands, they will fail to co-design, of course. And this beauty aspect is really important for all of our maps. And that's the reason why all maps in the intersection toolkit will be beautiful. We have the best graphics designers in our network. I'm really proud of that. And one of the central maps is the capability map. So if you're coming from this architect space, it's a concept quite big in the business architecture community and in the enterprise architecture space. So you can see capabilities as a hierarchical decomposition of the business. So you say that's the elephant, and then we have sales and services, operations, executions, and so on. So this looks really simple. In practice, there's a lot of confusion, as you can see on LinkedIn, and that's the reason why we are about to write a paper to reframe the concept, because it comes from business schools and it's a 70 years old concept, and we are using it in a way that's not very helpful, but that's a topic for a different webinar. But think of it that capabilities are the clue and can be this elephant model where every other map can be related to a certain capability. So maybe the center of gravity of architecture, maybe. And once you have that, we will have in the toolkit more specific maps, architectural maps, resource-oriented maps. So what resources do I need to support this elephant, right? So processes, we will include this typical process map you have in good old process management, but you need to model it on a higher granularity and always with user experience in mind. So it's not enough to have process management in your company. Typically, these departments are quite isolated and they model processes on a very low level, usually connected to legal compliance. That's not the way we want to do processes. We want to have it on a level everybody understands. And the same is true with information. So that's a good old concept coming from the 90s or older, this business object modeling. We believe in enterprise-wide logical information entity modeling. So that's an account, and the customer has an account, and an elephant, that's an ear, and the ear is related to the head, and so on. The concept is so simple, and in my experience, business people understand it, and they can behave as architects. We can bring them this concept. That's the idea with architectural thinking, and enable them to think like an architect and to co-design information object models. That's possible. Yeah, and on the right side, application. So that's nothing new. And as you can see, that's not very innovative. The innovation here is this constant focus on user experience, on simplicity, modeling not in isolated silos, but modeling and discussing these models with everybody and bring them in. And that's the challenge. So that's the models there are not that fancy. I don't think so, but we will collect the patterns and how to model that stuff. That will be interesting. And what we also have in our toolkit are Milky Way maps. So if you haven't seen that, we also offer webinars. Annika Kleiva and I am from Sweden. They invented it, and we are happy that we can also connect it with our toolkit. So the idea here is to visualize the enterprise as a geography. So you have in the center, you might have capabilities, and on the outside you have this geometry, geography with capabilities or other elements. So the idea is to keep this geography and depict the enterprise on a large wall and understand the relations between all of these elements better. So this geography idea will be big in our intersection toolkit. Also for today, not that much time to go deeper. If you're interested, we have some webinars, and Annika will give this every now and then on our webinar series. So, and now let's go to the second phase of the intersection toolkit, exploration. And exploration, of course, is highly depending on the context. So on the one hand, what we will come up with is an enterprise design scan. That's a concept where we look at the enterprise as a whole. So we have a new assignment at the company, and the design and the pitches. We want to do a scan of the whole enterprise, not only into the IT, not only into the organization. And what we have already, and we will publish in version 1.0 of the toolkit, is an enterprise design scan. So where we have qualitative research questions, quantitative research questions, with the tools where people have templates they can fill out like checklist to find out what's the problem, where shall we dive deeper. So that's this enterprise design scan. The idea is have a look at the broad picture and make it available for executives for their business decisions, and look at the products, look at the experience, look at the organization and at the identity on a higher level. So we look in with this kind of scans, we look at all facets and all intersections. And that's an example for a more specific scan exploration. That's for a specific design challenge. So if I have the pitch to have a look at only at the IT, we will come up with tools that support this more specific design challenge. So the intersection toolkit will also come up with specific tools only for this typical IT stuff. So we also want to be an alternative to the prevalent enterprise architecture framework. So I think it can be used for big IT mergers. And in that case, what we will have is an assessment for the functional fitness, the complexity of an IT application landscape. So that's where I'm coming from. I have decades of experience in assessing IT landscapes and having some Excel sheets and to assess it, to make problems visible as a basis for strategic IT decisions. And that will also be part of the toolkit, but that's only one of maybe 6 or 7 design challenges. We will have similar for organization. So you can have an assessment of the org chart and so on. But the benefit is to bring it all together and to connect it, connect all the facets and connect all the specific design challenges to a coherent overall enterprise design. And then the third phase is the co-design phase. And what we are fostering here is a broad collaborative design process. So elephant again, right? Means you have all these wide designing and architecting disciplines. You have the organizational designer, you have the software architects and their microservices and their domain-driven design, and you have the product manager, and you have the service designer and the customer journeys and the process. They will all continue their work, of course. They all have their bodies of knowledge. But what we want to add is maybe a new role called enterprise design practitioner or similar. We are not sure how to call this guy. And that job is very much about facilitation. So the intersection toolkit will be really strong with tools that help people to structure workshops in design sprints, for example, or other workshop formats. And there's a huge body of knowledge from the Google Design Sprint community. And the enterprise design community have already tools how to apply this Google Sprint format for enterprises. So think of it like bringing all relevant people to a certain room and let them work on this typical prototype. So on the left side, you have a team visualizing a new workflow using Lego, or in the center, somebody does some sketching, or on the right side, you co-design an organizational structure. And that's where you see where the maps affect also the design sprint. So we will come up with formats where we say, okay, if you have this design challenge, you pass this exploration phase already. If you have this design challenge, run this kind of design sprint using these maps. So that are patterns, and our toolkit will be heavy, and we will have a lot of pattern driven by the wisdom of our community. And we have some really experienced guys from this design sprint community. We have really cool facilitators that are big in running, and they have already done such design sprints. But as you can see, that's a bit unfamiliar for people like me, because I'm an architect. I'm working with UML and this stuff. So that's the guys that do the Lego handicrafts and so on. And then that's really will be amazing what will happen when we start to combine all these more designer-related tasks, like in a design sprint or design thinking workshops, with the more analytical engineering thinking. That's exactly where the intersection can happen. And we want, of course, also to co-design those people information object models, for example. So we want to bring in concepts from the IT guys and make it available in those workshops. That's not so common for the UX guys, for example. And if you go back to the center again, we call this the investing in change concepts. And maybe you are a bit surprised that we see this management stuff as part of this intersection toolkit or as enterprise design. But at the end, if you are not at the boardroom with all your ideas and with all your design scenarios, you are nowhere, because we must reach that the executives, each euro they invest should be based on a certain map that has been co-designed. So what we do for them is we go to the loop to the left side, do the exploration, facilitate workshops, invite co-design, and we have all the maps, and we have the facilitation skills. We have a lot of tools coming from the enterprise and software architects communities, and we connect this wisdom to come up with aggregated management instruments, management dashboards. Because as you can see at this picture, deciders quite often have the biggest impact on design, and all too often they make really big decisions without considering all the consequences and dependencies. So I haven't seen many decisions where the people exactly knew what would happen if we just remove this part of the org chart. Typically, it's frustration and processes are done. We all know that. So with enterprise design and with the maps, we want to support this decision, and we want to make this these relations and these dependencies as an important available at the boardroom, so that the people can make better informed decisions based on our maps that are targeted for them, because we want to have the best user experience. So we are already working on the questions, what is the information these guys need to make big decisions? I all too often hear from them, we always make decisions based on weak information, but with enterprise design maps, we have all the source data necessary to make good decisions. And there are two things you must connect to your enterprise design maps, and one is money. So make enterprise design maps as the perfect management instruments. In that case, it's a simple capability map. Typically, capability maps are living in this enterprise architecture ivory tower, not so much in the boardroom. Not many make it there. But if you're not there and they make their decisions and their big money decisions not on your capability map, it's quite useless. You don't need to do that. So in our approach, we must make a proper connection with money and with all the theory behind strategy and investment management. I mean, you can study that in Harvard, Stanford, I don't know. That's also a discipline, strategic management. And with intersection, and it's at the center of the intersection, we want to connect these management disciplines with enterprise design, because we think that's long needed. Also another isolated discipline like all the others, strategic management. And the second thing we must connect to the enterprise design map are the goals of the company. So think of all of these little bubbles as a goal where you can take the elephant again. So here I have it. And then you can say we have the goal to enlarge the nose here, or we have the goal, he needs a third eye. And once you have a picture of a shared understanding, once you have a map, a beautiful map that executives can almost touch, at least it's hanging at the wall, however, then they can take their finger and say, I want to be better here or there. And they can, it's the perfect instrument to connect all these strategic goals or maybe strategic decisions with the maps. And so means that with the intersection toolkit, we will also have some tools for defining ownerships, like in Design for Digital book, for design of strategic governance. Who's the owner for what part of this elephant, and all of these questions that stand up. So that's at the center. That's the center of the intersection. And when we go to the right of this loop, it comes closer to realization. And the big question is, where does design stop and where does realization begin? And that's, you can't answer this question. At the end, you have some higher level designs, like a high level capability map, or the product, the high level products a company have. And at the end, you go closer and closer to realization, and then you implement a line of code. And that's also design, in my opinion. And also, if you build a shop or a branch of a bank, if you do the building, you have the brick, and then you for sure have certain design decisions you make just in time before you build that stuff. So for us, this designing and building, it's a continuum. It's not designing and waterfall and building. That means that our instruments must connect the concepts from the builders with the concepts of the designers. So you will always have some high-level designs by a few, like a high-level capability map or the process map or so. You need it for coherence, so that the things fit together. And on the other hand, we know that there are 100 times as many people close to realization, and they know how things really work, and we want to empower them. So that's the whole idea behind the Agile movement, for example. And yes, most of the design should be done by these autonomous teams, just in time realization. That's the idea here. But for our toolkit, it means that we must connect these two worlds, and that we will have answers, for example, how to connect this stuff, how to connect the software architecture, white box diagram, or how to connect the process model when you implement a certain software or you change only a process, and you go down to every detail, and a skilled business analyst models it. But we want to know how is it related to the elephant. If you can't tell me how your process, your very, very detailed process model supports the elephant, then maybe we shouldn't do this project, for example. And we believe that a lot of wisdom and truth lies in making these connections. If we don't have these connections to the realization people, we don't need to design anything, because they are, like today, they are almost doing what they want. They follow their product's owner quite blindly, and the products are usually not that well aligned. We want to change that. We want to align all the product owners of the autonomous solution teams to work in the direction of a coherent enterprise design, so that everybody feels as a co-designer of the whole. And with enterprise design, that's exactly the mind shift we want to make, from solution and time to market and availability, and now to sustainability, enterprise awareness. But to achieve that, we must make the connection to all the builders. If we don't have these connections, we are lost. And the good thing is that with Scott Ambler, we have a quite well-known guy from the Agile community. So we will probably this year have implement the connection with this disciplined Agile toolkit. So that's one of the three biggest scaled Agile frameworks, toolkit in that case. And yeah, so that's the way we want to do this. And also a concept when it comes to connecting realization with enterprise design is how to connect all these requirements to the enterprise-wide maps. If you've watched one of my webinars, but I always say I don't understand how this scaled Agile framework or this pipelining works if you have hundreds of people that come to a big room and everybody has thousands of sticky notes and they do it like on the left side. And we believe that having enterprise-wide maps, having a map of the elephant, maybe in that case capabilities, is the perfect means to sort that and to understand for each epic. So I'm coming from the software side. Yeah, how does this epic or this user story support a certain capability? If we can't answer that, maybe we don't need to implement that feature. So we want to have this kind of traceability. And with this business architecture concepts like capabilities or high-level processes, we believe the concepts are there, but typically the Agile people or the software solution teams, they discussed it once with a guy from software development, and I said, is this not, that's quite straightforward. If you have this capability model, why not connect your epics or user stories to the capabilities of the enterprise, to understand what are we doing, where are we in this shared understanding. He said, yes, this is an easy idea, but I've never seen a company with a capability map that is accepted and used by the people. And that's the problem, that we have all the concepts, but they're living in their small little silos. Yeah, and what we want to see is that the autonomous teams, I'm a fan of autonomous teams, and I'm also a fan of Scrum and all Agile approaches, but we must have someone who is the owner of the enterprise design. You must have somebody that is not the product owner, maybe he or she is the product owner, that feels accountable for connecting the solution with the whole. And we must bring this enterprise awareness to the micro level, because at the end, everybody is design on a micro level, and 80% of the design work probably happens in the software development teams. We want to encourage them, but at the end, somebody must be there in the teams and understand the concepts, how to connect it to the enterprise design. Yeah, in the sixth phase, it's about reuse. There are some interesting concepts from design systems community, coming more from the user experience field. There are components from frameworks. Reuse has been discussed in the software community also decades ago. So it's a bit, it sounds a bit outdated, but we don't think so. We think that it is possible. But there's much more to come in the Intersection Toolkit 1.0. Okay, so that concludes my overview of the toolkit and of the 5 phases we have. I only have maybe 5 or 6 slides remaining until we can have a questions and answers session. So who are we? What are we doing? Intersection Group has been founded half a year ago by Milan Günther and me. So we are the presidents. He's coming from this enterprise design community. I'm coming from enterprise architecture, architectural thinking. And legally, we are a not-for-profit association, and we are truly not-for-profit. That's really important because that's the only way why we can attract all these awesome people to our community. We now have 50 plus members, and most of them have written books and are experts for decades. And we have this interdisciplinary knowledge in our community. And the only goal, according to our statutes, that's our constitution, we are not allowed to make profit. The only goal is to create and spread the wisdom on how to create better enterprises. And that's where the toolkit is important for us. It's the collection of all the wisdom of the community, focusing in these maps and all the other tools. And we already have this existing vibrant community. If you're interested, you can go to intersection.group. The new website will be launched this week, hopefully. There's only a video, but it will be available in the next couple of days. And our community is growing. So we have now 3,000 in the news as a newsletter subscriber, 50 plus members. So these 50 plus members for us are enough to co-design this toolkit. So all of them are really seasoned experts, and they work on what we call work streams. So they discuss certain topics, for example, how to connect strategy with the core, or how to connect information architecture. And we have a stream on software architecture, software development, where for each phase in this toolkit, we have a group of 5 or 6 people that focus on this discussion. And then we have a core team that tries to incorporate the wisdom of the findings of these teams with the core. And the strength is this interdisciplinarity. So we think we have around 40% enterprise and business architects and 40% of designers of many kinds, experience, service, business designers. But we have also others, org designers, agile people, brand designers, and it's really, really interdisciplinary community. And it's exciting what happens when you discuss with those people. At the beginning, it's quite alien, but after half a year of discussing with them, it's not so much alien to me. But yeah, so these are just some of them. If you're interested, you can find them on the webpage within the next couple of days. And what are we creating? Right, the community, we started as a community. But if you have a community, you can run conferences, and we're doing that. We have Intersection Conference. It's in September in Stockholm, if you're interested, conference on strategic enterprise design. Building a community is not enough to spread the wisdom. We need to have some publications. And our first book has been published in November. It's called Enterprise Design Patterns, 35 instantly usable patterns for doing enterprise architecture, enterprise design with an impact. So I would say it's the foundation for the toolkit. We will always relate to the patterns that are there. And if you're interested, and you can go to enterprisedesignpatterns.com and get sneak previews there. Yeah, and then the toolkit, probably our main creation we want to co-create. A lightweight set of tools that support architectural thinking and enterprise design and all the phases I presented today. Yeah, and so that's the final advertisement for the book, of course. Our shop, the cool thing is our shop, delulu.com, is our publisher. You can go there, and I think for this week it's 15% off if you use this discount code, and you can buy it there, or you can get sneak preview chapters at enterprisedesignpatterns.com. All right, so this completes my presentation. I'm curious to hear some questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Wolfgang. I have posted a few of the chats, the comments that came in as we were running in the chat that we have there. I think so most of them were sort of comments, I think, to the rest of the group. You've had your reference. The first sort of question with a question mark after it that we have there is, in what formats will your framework be in? PDF, Visio, other?
It will be a downloadable document, a PDF. And probably we're also in discussion with some tool vendors that already start to implement certain pieces in their tools. So think of it as it will be downloadable as a PDF, and we will have e-learning formats where you can do some self-training. You can download the training and you have animated video to spread our content. That's the idea. And let's see how far the tool vendors will get this year. But over the years, we hope to become a standard and to be implemented by tool vendors.
Okay. So just looking in for some other comments here. So the same. I think you've answered that from the first part. There's also what will be included in your toolkits, the documents, software. So yes, I'll answer that. Have you had the chance to read the other comments? Maybe you have a view on those.
Okay, where can I find it? Or maybe you can ask me.
Yes. So the first one was architecture and architects are always bound to the product and the business and all the other domains in the organization. It is just the collective failure of most architects that it is as it is.
I'm not so sure. For me, this is a bit one-dimensional to blame architects that it is as it is. I think the problem that architecture has made, enterprise architecture hasn't made it to the enterprise. You can't blame one discipline. I think it's the symptom of this blind man story. So maybe we have failed as enterprise architects to bring the idea and the concepts of architecture to the business people. I mean, Bespoke has been trying for 10 years or so, but in reality, that's still IT heavy. So I'm not sure if this is if you can say if it's a collective failure of most architects that it is. Maybe one failure is that our bodies of knowledge are so bloated and hard to read, and you cannot bring TOGAF to a product manager and say, read these 900 pages. And that's also a vision I had with architectural thinking. This is now part of Intersection, is to make architecture as simple as an iPhone in a way that it is self-explanatory. And you bring this iPhone with this elephant model to the CEO and you connect it with money and with the strategic goals. And I bet that he will use it. You no need to call it architecture, just make an architectural map.
Okay. I have a question here from Tom Gilb. Do you have a clear method to define and quantify stakeholder values and qualities?
Tom, I knew that this question will come from you. Not yet, and thanks for sending me the documents. It's a bit much. Currently, we don't have the value concept in the toolkit. We have just products, and we don't have it as a number one priority to have a quantification, a measurable notion of value. Not yet.
Let's say I guess that there's nothing further on the chat here. So yeah, I'd like to say thank you very much for this. It's been very educational and useful. We'll be making the video available on the channel, so a bit of rewatch it. I will edit out some of the slow start at the beginning, but it'll look better. So yes, and if anybody out there has any questions or would like to have us discuss anything else or would like to help contribute to OSWA, please get in contact with us. So yeah, with that said, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Wolfgang, for the presentation.
Okay. Are we still online? No?
Yeah, we're still online.
Yes, I will close us.